There are some things in cycling that we can all agree on. For example, riding in the sunshine, much better than riding in the rain. Eddie Merckx, the greatest cyclist of all time. Tim Crabber's the rider, best book about bike racing ever written. And we all know that carbon bikes are lighter, stiffer, faster, and hey, 1,000,000 times better than aluminium ones, right? But what if I told you that the last one isn't always true? What if I told you that this aluminium Trek Émonda ALR5 is only 150 grams heavier than its carbon equivalent? What if I told you that it costs almost a third less and performs pretty much exactly the same on the road? Would you believe me? But before we go any further, a quick reminder to subscribe to our channel if you want to support independent bike reviews such as this one. With that out of the way though, let's talk about the details. Now the new Trek Émonda ALR5 pairs a hydroformed aluminium frame with a carbon fork, and at £2,320 or $2,300, it's the cheapest way to get your hands on a Trek Émonda, the American brand's all-round lightweight climbing platform. This base model features an 11-speed Shimano 105 mechanical group set and a suite of affordable yet practical components. In fact, it's practically all the same parts as found on the Trek Émonda SL5, which costs £3,250 or $3,350. And just like that carbon version, the Emonda ALR features truncated aerofoil tubing, most notably on the down tube and the fork. It also has fully internal cable routing through the upper headset bearing, which is claimed to reduce drag even more, while fortunately not impacting your ability to customize the front end. Now, it is worth pointing out that Trek hasn't actually offered any wind tunnel data or figures to say that it's X watts faster at 50 kilometers per hour or whatever, but I suspect that most people won't really be too bothered about that anyway, as those claims can often feel pretty meaningless in the grand scheme of things. In fact, if you're interested in this bike, then I think you might be more interested in the quality of its construction. And while I admittedly have never welded anything in my entire life, to my untrained eye, the results are pretty clean. While you can plainly see the joints at the rear dropouts, the welds around the head tube are much more subtle, and all things considered, it's a premium looking frame, especially with this rather eye-catching paint job, though I'm sure you'll let me know your thoughts in the comments below as well. Given this is supposed to be something of a climber's bike, let's talk a little bit about weight. Now, with a claimed weight of 1,663 grams, this Emonda ALR frame set, which is the frame and the fork together, weighs just 34 grams more than the carbon Emonda SL frame set. Of course, the top of the range Emonda SLR frame set is at 1,140 grams, significantly lighter. However, it is also significantly more expensive, costing £4,900 for the frame set alone, so that hardly feels a fair comparison. In terms of how it all comes together, this size 56 Emonda ALR5 weighs just over 9 kilos, which of course is not super light in the grand scheme of things, but to be fair, it is competitive with rivals such as the specialised LA Sprint Comp and the Cannondale CAD 13 Disc 105. It's also, as mentioned in the intro, only 150 grams more than the overall weight for the carbon fibre Trek Émonda SL5, which isn't bad considering that it costs almost £1,000 less. In terms of geometry, the Emonda ALR5 adopts the same H.15 geo featured on the carbon Emonda and the new Trek Madone SLR. Now this sits in the middle of Trek's previous Pro-style H1 and the more relaxed H2 fit geometries. Basically means that most riders should be able to customise the front end to get their preferred fit, whether that was long and slammed or shorter and more upright. It's also notable that the Emonda ALR frame set is actually available in 8 sizes, from 47 to 62 centimetres, which is good news for those at the more extreme ends of the sizing bell curve. Now, compared to something like the specialised LA Sprint, a similarly racy aluminium bike, the Emonda ALR's geometry is just a little bit more relaxed, with a tiny bit more trail to slow down the front end handling and a slightly higher and shorter riding position. Fortunately though, the inclusion of standard parts such as a 27.2mm seat post, a round steerer and a non-integrated front end means that if you do want to go to town and mould the bike to your precise fit, that's a pretty easy thing to do, and for me, it's a real breath of fresh air. Out on the road, the Emonda ALR 5 is a very easy bike to get along with. It has a marginally more relaxed personality than the LA Sprint, but for many this will be a plus, as the LA Sprint is, to be fair, a very racy bike. Like that bike though, the Emonda ALR belies its weight, feeling quick to respond to inputs and generally very easy to manoeuvre. Shimano's 11-speed 105 group set remains as impressive as ever. Shifts at the rear are slick and fast, and the braking and ergonomics are excellent too. Coming off my own giant TCR, which is currently built up with 12-speed Shimano Di2, I was also really impressed by how good the front shifting on this bike is. Of course, mechanical group sets are far more sensitive to setup issues, cable stretch and so on, but when it's all done right, 105 is a good reminder that you don't need to splash the cash on fancy electronic gears to get good front shifting. Talking about gears, on this build you get climbing friendly 50-30 4-tooth chainrings up front, paired with a short cage rear derailleur and an 11 to 30 tooth cassette out the back. Now I do think that a medium length rear derailleur would have been a smart inclusion just to open up your gearing options, but for general day-to-day road riding it's not a major loss, and I expect most people will be more than happy with what's on offer here. In terms of kit, well, the stock Bontrager finishing kit is nothing flashy, but it all gets the job done, and as already mentioned, it can be replaced or upgraded easily if you have particular tastes or fit requirements. Given the rather basic aluminium seat post and my plentiful experience with cheaper aluminium bikes, I will admit that I was a bit concerned that the Emonda ALR would be a bit uncomfortable. Fortunately though, I actually found the opposite to be true. The ride quality at the rear end is very smooth, and while I might choose to upgrade the seat post to an inline carbon model for fit and aesthetic purposes, it certainly doesn't need it from a ride quality point of view. Of course, like any bike at this price point, the build isn't flawless. Firstly, I didn't get on with the Bontrager Verse Comp saddle. Now it might be personal, but for me it's far too padded and I just didn't find it a comfortable place to sit. In fact, I'd have much preferred it if Trek had spec'd a version of its Bontrager ALS saddle like you get on the higher end Emonda and Madone builds. That said, I'm sure everyone has their favourite saddle anyway, so it isn't the end of the world. The low-end Bontrager tyres are also disappointing compared to the best road bike tyres currently available, and they do make the bike feel sluggish when you're trying to ride fast. So if this were my bike, these would be the first thing that I would look to upgrade after sorting out the fit. Likewise, while the Bontrager Paradigm SL rims have a healthily wide 21mm internal rim width and are tubeless ready, the wheel set as a whole is fairly heavy and uninspiring. Ultimately, upgrading basic wheels to something like a more aerodynamic set of carbon hoops can still cost a lot of money, but there are also lighter, more aero aluminium wheel sets available too, such as Hunt's 34 aero wide disc SL wheels, for example. And I do think that this bike would benefit greatly from a wheel upgrade in the long term. It is fair to say that flaws such as this are fairly common at this price point though, and unless you're buying from a direct sales brand such as Canyon, then it's not unusual to see a quality frame set paired with somewhat lackluster build. And that's certainly the case for the Specialized LA Sprint Comp disc and the Cannondale CAD 13 disc 105 too. Overall, the Trek Émonda ALR 5 is a welcome addition to an increasing range of high quality aluminium race bikes. There are certainly cheaper aluminium road bikes available, but with the same budget for the carbon Emonda SL5, I think I'd much rather have this bike and spend the leftover cash on upgrading some of the parts. If I were choosing between this bike and something like the LA Sprint or the CAD 13 disc, well, that's a trickier choice. In reality, there's very little to separate those three bikes. I think the marginally racier geometry and the lighter handling of the LA Sprint, as well as the slightly more aero-optimised frame, would probably swing it for me, but I can also see why some people might prefer the more traditional look of the Emonda ALR, or like the CAD 13, because they don't want to deal with fully internal cable routing. But what do you think? Do you think aluminium can truly compete with carbon as a material for race bikes, or is carbon still king? Let me know what you think in the comments below. And if you want to learn more about alloy race bikes, then why not watch this video?